southern France, 19 BCE. Two worlds occupy the same valley. Walk along the riverbank at ground level. Your sandals sink into 3 inches of mud mixed with animal dung. The stench is overwhelming. A dead goat lies bloating in the shallows. It'll be there for a week before anyone moves it. Women beat clothes against rocks. Children throw stones at crows picking at something unidentifiable. A farmer drives oxen through standing sewage, shouting in a dialect that won't exist in 200 years. This is Roman Gaul, the edge of empire. The average person here has never seen a map, never read a word, never traveled more than 15 miles from where they were born. Life expectancy, 32 years. Most will die from infections that a single course of antibiotics could cure. This is the most advanced civilization on Earth. Now look up. Suspended 49 meters above this medieval nightmare is a machine that shouldn't exist for another 2,000 years. The Pont du Gard, 3 tiers of perfect arches, 275 meters of impossible geometry, 50,000 tons of limestone, each block weighing up to 6 tons, fitted without mortar, without concrete, without iron clamps, held together by nothing but mathematics and gravity. The stones interlock so precisely that after 2 millennia of floods, earthquakes, ice, and human neglect, you cannot slide a razor blade between them. Surveyors in 2019 used laser scanning to measure the joints. Average gap, less than 1 millimeter. Some joints, 0 measurable gap. In the valley below, mud, disease, wooden tools, people dying from cuts. Overhead, construction that would challenge a modern firm with CAD software and satellite positioning. The contrast is so violent it breaks something in your brain, like finding a nuclear reactor in a Bronze Age village, like discovering a 747 buried under Stonehenge. And here's the part that should terrify you. The bridge isn't even the impressive part. The invisible river. The Pont du Gard is a fragment, a visible fraction of something far more disturbing. It carries water, that's its only purpose. One component of a 50-kilometer system running from the springs at Uzès to the city of Nîmes. 50 kilometers across valleys, through mountains underground for long stretches, then emerging to cross gorges on impossible bridges, before vanishing again. And the entire system operates on gravity alone. No pumps, no mechanical assistance, no human intervention once the water enters. It flows from source to city, 50 kilometers, dropping just 17 meters total. That's a gradient of 0.24 millimeters per meter. Let me show you what that means. Take a ruler, lay it flat on a table. Now lift one end by the thickness of 2 sheets of paper. That invisible tilt, you can't see it, can't feel it, can't detect it without instruments, is the precision required to move water 50 kilometers across terrain that rises and falls by hundreds of meters. 1. Fraction too steep and the water accelerates, erodes the channel, destroys, in decades, what took generations to build. 1 fraction too shallow and water pools, stagnates, breeds bacteria, poisons the city it was designed to save. The margin for error is measured in hundredths of millimeters, over 50 kilometers. And the Romans supposedly achieved this with sticks, bronze hand tools. Wooden measuring frames called chorobates, basically a 20-foot plank with a water channel cut into the top. Wax tablets for calculations. Workers who couldn't read their own names. Foremen communicating by gesture because half the labor force spoke different languages. No laser levels, no GPS, no computers, no theodolites, no topographic maps, no mathematical concept of elevation as we understand it. French surveyor Henri Pitot spent 3 weeks measuring the Pont du Gard in 1746. His conclusion, published in the Royal Academy of Sciences, he could not determine how it was done. In 2020, hydraulic researchers at the University of Montpellier published a paper attempting to reverse engineer the surveying techniques. After 2 years of analysis with modern equipment, their conclusion, the methods remain unclear. 274 years of study. The finest technical minds in France, still no definitive answer. But here's where the official story doesn't just crack. It shatters completely. The Persian problem. Travel east with me, 3,000 kilometers, to a desert that kills everything. The year is 535 BCE, 500 years before Rome supposedly invented this technology. Summer temperatures, 55 degrees Celsius. Annual rainfall, almost 0. The ground is salt and sand and death. Nothing should survive here. Yet beneath this wasteland, an underground river has been flowing continuously for 26 centuries. The Connaught, 71 kilometers of tunnel, dug entirely by hand, through rock, clay, sand, and stone, tapping into aquifers at the base of distant mountains, delivering fresh water to the surface using nothing but gravity and mathematics. The Gonabad Connaught, still functioning, still irrigating 370 acres of farmland, still delivering 150 liters per second to communities that would otherwise be dust. But before I tell you why this destroys the official timeline, I need to show you what building one of these actually required. because the human cost changes everything. The men who worked in darkness, they were called muqannis, tunnel diggers, and their job was to descend into hell. Picture this. A vertical shaft drops into the earth, 10 meters, 50 meters, sometimes 300 meters, deeper than the Statue of Liberty is tall. You climb down a rope ladder, rung by rung, the circle of daylight above, shrinking to a coin, then a pinprick, then nothing. At the bottom, the temperature is constant, 40 degrees Celsius. The air is thick with dust. Your lungs coat with grit within minutes. Light comes from a single oil lamp that consumes the oxygen you need to breathe. The flame flickers. If it dies, you have seconds to decide, climb or suffocate. The tunnel head is barely wider than your shoulders. Ceiling so low you work on your knees for 12 hours, 6 days a week for years. Your job, crawl to the face, swing an iron pick, fill leather buckets with debris, pass them back to be hauled to the surface. Progress, 2 to 3 meters per day, for tunnels stretching 30, 50, 70 kilometers. Do the math. A 30-kilometer kanat at 3 meters per day requires 10,000 days of digging. 27 years, just for the horizontal tunnel, before the vertical shafts, before the surface channels, before the distribution network. A single kanat consumed entire lifetimes. Men entered these tunnels as teenagers and emerged, if they emerged, as grandfathers. Some never saw their children grow up. Some never saw sunlight for months at a time. Their skin turned pale, their eyes adjusted to darkness so completely that daylight became painful. And that's if nothing went wrong. Cave-ins killed without warning. One crack in the ceiling, one shift in the soil, and tons of earth buried you alive. Your coworkers might dig for hours, might reach you in time. Probably wouldn't. They'd find you in the position you died. Arms raised against the falling dark or curled like you were sleeping. Bad air killed without warning. Carbon dioxide pools in low spaces. Invisible, odorless. Heavier than the oxygen you need. You'd feel dizzy first. Sit down to rest. Think you just needed a moment. Never stand up again. They'd find your body at the tunnel face days later, peaceful, like you'd simply decided to sleep. Falls from ladders, crippled men for life. 300 meters of rope ladder in absolute darkness. One wet rung, one moment where your grip slipped, 1 second of inattention after 12 hours of crushing labor. The lucky ones died on impact. The unlucky ones lay at the bottom with shattered spines, waiting. The muqannis passed knowledge from father to son. Families specialized in this work for generations. The mathematics was never written down. It existed only in the minds of men who spent their lives underground. When they died, they took pieces of the knowledge with them, and somehow this primitive workforce achieved the same precision as Roman builders working 5 centuries later. Same gradients, same ventilation shaft spacing, 1 every 30 meters exactly, same tunnel dimensions, same filtration methods, sand over charcoal over gravel, 3,000 kilometers between Persia and Rome, 500 years between construction dates. The methods match exactly, which means one of two things. Either this is the greatest coincidence in human history, or the official story is a lie. The pattern that shouldn't exist. This is where mainstream archaeology has no answer. UNESCO documented over 50,000 kanats still functioning. In Iran alone, 50,000. Another 3,000 in Oman, thousands more across 34 countries. Spain, Morocco, Algeria, Afghanistan, Pakistan, China. All of them share the same technical specifications. Tunnel heights, 1.2 to 1.5 meters, everywhere. Shaft intervals, 25 to 35 meters, everywhere. Gradient ratios, 1.1000 to 1.1500, everywhere. Filtration layers, sand over charcoal over gravel, everywhere. The Gonabad Kanat in Iran. The Kharez systems of Xinjiang, China, over 1,000 kilometers of underground tunnels. The Fogaras of Algeria, the Kataras of Morocco, the Acequias of Spain, the Falaj of Oman. Different names, different languages, different cultures supposedly separated by oceans of time and space. The construction methods match perfectly. Dr. Joshka Wessels spent 20 years studying these systems across 12 countries, mapping hundreds of kanats, measuring dimensions, interviewing the families who've maintained them for generations. Her conclusion? Published in 2018. The building techniques are so consistent across such vast distances that independent development is essentially impossible. The Middle East Institute published a study in 2021, reaching the same conclusion. The standardization suggests centralized knowledge transfer, not gradual diffusion through trade. But here's where the pattern becomes undeniable. The tunnels follow the Silk Road, not approximately, precisely. Every major kanat system lies within 50 kilometers of documented Silk Road routes. 8,000 kilometers of underground water infrastructure from Spain to Western China. The official explanation is parallel development. Similar problems produce similar solutions. Except parallel development doesn't work that way. When two cultures independently invent the wheel, they they don't produce matching spoke patterns. When two cultures independently develop writing, they don't create the same alphabets. Persian carpets don't look like Chinese silk. Indian steel doesn't match Damascus blades. Japanese architecture doesn't resemble Egyptian temples. Yet the qanats match. Exactly. Same dimensions, same spacing, same mathematics. From one end of the ancient world to the other. That's not parallel development. That's standardization. That's coordinated construction on a scale that shouldn't have been possible. A global network, built by builders who were written out of history. The ones that didn't survive. We've only talked about the qanats that worked, the masterpieces. But for every Gonabad qanat, there were dozens that failed. Tunnels that collapsed before completion, gradients miscalculated, water that never flowed, or flowed too fast and destroyed everything, aquifers that ran dry after a decade. The muqannis didn't have computer simulations, they had mathematics passed down through generations, and trial and error measured in human lives. They were throwing raw human suffering at the laws of physics until something worked. For every qanat that survived to become a UNESCO World Heritage Site, countless others are collapsed tunnels filled with bones. But here's what's strange. Even the failures follow the same specifications. The collapsed qanats, the abandoned tunnels, they all show the same construction methods, the same shaft spacing, the same dimensions. Whoever taught this knowledge didn't just teach success, they taught a system. A protocol followed whether it worked or not. That's not organic development, that's institutional training. The question is, what institution? The skeptic's objection. Let me address the obvious objections directly. Objection 1, the Romans documented their methods. Partially true. Vitruvius wrote about aqueduct construction in De Architectura around 30 BCE. He described tools and materials, but Vitruvius never explains how to calculate a gradient of 0.24 millimeters per meter across 50 kilometers using a 20-foot wooden plank. Because he didn't know. He was describing the what? Not the how. The man who wrote the most comprehensive Roman text on construction couldn't explain how their greatest achievement actually worked. Objection 2, knowledge spreads through trade. Trade produces variation, local adaptation, regional innovation. The qanats show none of this. The specifications match from Spain to China. No variation, no evolution. That's not diffusion, that's protocol. Objection 3, ancient people were intelligent enough to figure it out. Absolutely true. But intelligence doesn't explain standardization across 8,000 kilometers before telecommunications existed. The intelligence was there. What's missing is the explanation for how it was organized across impossible distances. The map that vanished before 1800, every Western cartographer labeled the vast region from Eastern Europe to the Pacific with a single name, Tartary. Look at any map printed before 1850. French, British, Dutch, German, Spanish, they all show the same thing. And empire larger than any in recorded history, 11 time zones, from Poland to Japan. This wasn't obscure knowledge, it was on every map, in every encyclopedia. Marco Polo wrote about it, Jesuit missionaries documented it. Then something happened. By 1900, Tartary had vanished. Every map, every textbook, the largest empire in human history, gone from collective memory in 50 years, not gradually forgotten, systematically removed, but geographic terms don't build standardized water infrastructure across 34 countries. Geographic terms don't train workers in matching methods from Spain to China, and geographic terms don't appear on every map for 300 years, and then vanish overnight, not without help. The reset window researchers point to a cluster of events between 1811 and 1816, a 5-year window where civilization cracked. 1811, the Great Comet appears, visible to the naked eye for 260 days, the longest observation of any comet in recorded history. Preachers call it divine warning. Scientists have no explanation. 1811, 1812, the New Madrid earthquakes, the most powerful seismic events in North American history. The Mississippi River ran backwards for hours. Church bells rang in Boston, 1,000 miles away, from the shaking alone. Entire towns liquefied and sank into the earth. 1812. Wars erupt simultaneously on multiple continents. Napoleon's invasion of Russia, 600,000 soldiers march east through summer heat and autumn mud. Fewer than 100,000 stumble back. The rest freeze, starve, or are cut down and retreat. Washington, D.C. burns. Revolutions sweep South America. 1815. Mount Tambora explodes. The largest volcanic eruption in recorded history. The sound was heard 1,000 miles away. 71,000 dead on the island. Ash circled the globe. 1816, the year without a summer. Snow falls in June across New England. Frost kills crops in July. Rivers freeze in August. The sun appears dimmed, like through smoked glass, witnesses wrote. They called it 1800 and froze to death. Harvests failed across 3 continents. Tens of millions starved. Bodies piled in roads because there was no one left to bury them. And while the world burned and starved, the maps quietly changed. Before 1816, Tartaria appears on every major atlas. After 1820, it begins to fade. By 1850, gone completely. The infrastructure remains. The qanats still flow. The aqueducts still stand. But the credit shifts. The Persian qanats become Persian. The Roman aqueducts become Roman. The Chinese cars become Chinese. The builders vanish from history. The buildings remain. And nobody alive remembers enough to ask why. The Castellum proof. One more piece of evidence. And this one should end the debate entirely. At the terminus of the Pont du Gard, water emptied into a structure called the Castellum Divisorium, a distribution hub, 10 pipelines radiating outward to different quarters of Nimes. In 2020, hydraulic researcher Dr. Charles Ortloff analyzed the Castellum using modern fluid dynamics software. The 10 pipelines were sized using critical flow theory, a mathematical principle that optimizes diameter relative to gradient and flow rate. Critical flow theory wasn't formally described until 1861, 2,000 years after the Castellum was supposedly designed. The Romans had no mathematical framework for it. No equations, no theory. Yet the Castellum achieves critical flow perfectly. Dr. Ortloff's conclusion: the Romans possessed practical knowledge that exceeded their documented theoretical understanding. But here's what no academic will say publicly. If the Romans couldn't explain how it worked and left no records of the mathematics, and the theory wasn't described for another 2,000 years, then the Romans didn't design it. They inherited it. They used it. They maintained it. But they didn't create it. And whoever did was erased so completely that we're still pretending the Romans figured it out on their own. The unbearable question: could we build the Pont du Gard today using only ancient technology? No computers, no laser levels, no GPS, no steel tools, no powered equipment, no modern surveying instruments. Just bronze hand tools, wooden scaffolding, rope pulleys, and workers who can't read. Could we achieve a gradient of 0.24 millimeters per meter across 50 kilometers of varying terrain? The answer, be honest, is almost certainly no. Not because we're less intelligent, but because the skills are extinct. The techniques are lost. The workforce doesn't exist. The muqannis, who could dig through 300 meters of darkness, are gone. The knowledge they carried, the mathematics never written down, died with them in those tunnels. The last masters of qanat construction are elderly men in remote Iranian villages, and when they die, the final threads of this knowledge die with them. We're watching an ancient science go extinct in real time, and we're not even trying to save it. Modern programs don't teach ancient surveying. Why would they? We have satellites, we have lasers, we have computer modeling that can simulate stress loads across 1 million variables. We've spent 2,000 years building better tools, and somewhere in that process, we lost the ability to work without them. We've optimized ourselves into dependency. Look at the Pont du Gard, 50,000 tons of stone, still standing, still perfect, after 2 millennia of floods, ice, earthquakes, wars, and neglect. Now look at a modern concrete overpass, built to last 50 years, already cracking after 30, already requiring repairs that cost more than original construction. The Forth Bridge in Scotland, built in 1890, was designed to last 1,000 years. It's still perfect. Modern highway bridges are designed to last 50 years. They fail after 30. They built for eternity. We build for quarterly reports. They built like they were defying time itself. We build like we're waiting for collapse. What the water remembers. The Gonabad Qanat has delivered water continuously for 26 centuries. Let that sink in. 2,600 years. The Persian Empire rose and fell. Alexander conquered and died young in Babylon. Rome built an empire stretching from Britain to Egypt and watched it crumble. The Arabs swept across the Middle East. The Mongols burned everything in their path. The Ottomans rebuilt on the ashes. The British drew borders with rulers and arrogance. 2 world wars reshaped every map on Earth. The Soviet Union rose, terrified the planet for 70 years, and collapsed. Through all of it, every conquest, every empire, every war, every revolution, the water kept flowing. 26 centuries. Without electricity, without maintenance crews, without replacement parts. Just gravity and mathematics working perfectly for 100 generations. Long after the muqannis who dug them died in darkness. Long after their children forgot their names. Long after the civilization that trained them was scraped from every record. Our modern infrastructure lasts 50 years if we're lucky. Our pipes corrode. Our bridges crack. Our water treatment plants require constant electricity, constant monitoring, constant human intervention. One power outage and the system fails. One budget cut and maintenance stops. The qanats require nothing. No power grid. No government funding. They simply work, century after century, while empires rise and fall around them. a global water network built using consistent standards across 3 continents, workers trained in matching methods from Spain to China, workers who died in darkness so that water could flow in daylight, construction coordinated across distances that would challenge modern logistics. And then, in a 50-year window of chaos, the builders were written out of history. The Connaughts remember what we were made to forget. The stone carries the fingerprints of builders whose names were scraped from every record. The question isn't just what they built, it's why we were made to forget who built it. What did those muqannis know, those men who died in darkness 300 meters underground, that the world was never allowed to remember? The pattern continues. Look at photographs from the 1890s, the Chicago World's Fair, the Paris Exposition. Grand buildings that appeared in months and vanished just as quickly, demolished immediately after, never preserved. Look at old buildings in cities across every continent, windows at ground level, doors opening to walls of earth, basements that were clearly original ground floors. The same pattern, the same burial depth, the same timeline. From Boston to Budapest, from Melbourne to Moscow, something happened. Something was buried. Something was erased. The water is still telling us. The stone is still speaking. We just stopped listening. In the next video, we go beneath the cities, the train tunnels of New York, the underground of London, the metro of Paris, the infrastructure that was already there when the first official excavations began. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Because if the aqueducts reveal this much about what was erased above ground, imagine what they buried beneath your feet.